Okay, good evening, everyone. I just wanted to check if I'm audible.
Yes, we can hear you, Mrinali.
Okay, perfect. And Ruza, we're live on all our platforms, I believe.
Yes, we are. Yes.
Excellent. So while we allow people to join us, just a couple of housekeeping announcements. We are streaming live on Facebook. And in case you would like to join our Zoom meeting, please do. We'll share the link with you in the chat box and on Facebook. And in case you have any questions or comments throughout the session, please feel free to share them in the chat box on the Zoom link at the bottom, or also on Facebook, and we'll try to pick them as we go along, and we'll try to sort of weave them into the conversation. And for the people who are on Zoom, we would request you to keep your videos and your mics off so that we can have an uninterrupted session. So without further ado, I welcome you all to episode 3 of VC Live, which is the Value Co-Creators Live. It is a monthly series of interactive and educative conversations with experts in the field of architecture and design. In the first season of this initiative, we are addressing various aspects of what makes design conscious and how one can actually design consciously. And we also draw parallels, but comparisons between the two, what it means, what it entails, and how it can be achieved. So through informal but very insightful conversations with experts as well as young talent, we hope to define an equitable and empathic process of creating environments that are responsive to the needs and aspirations of its inhabitants, which is you, me, and all of us put together. So a very, very warm welcome. Just a quick note about the GVCC, which it is an initiative by, VC Live is an initiative by GVCC, which is the Godrej Value Co-Creators Club. It was established last year, and the GVCC is a platform for nurturing the architecture and interior design community. Through this platform, Godrej Locks and Architectural Fittings and Systems seek to build strong relationships with practitioners through regular engagements and educative endeavors such as this. And we hope to increase awareness and encourage free flow of information and about ideologies, practices, products, as well as facilitate better understanding of market trends. So while GVCC is an incentive-driven program, it also hopes to celebrate design excellence through an annual awards program called the GVs, which were recently concluded. It also engages with the community under initiatives such as the Value Co-Creators Live or VC Live, where we are today. And this is something that has been co-curated between Sneha Alal and myself. So Sneha, if you want to pop in and say hello.
Yes, hi everyone. Thank you so much for joining in. Yes.
So Sneha and I have been working on this for a few months. A quick note about who we are. Sneha is a trained creative writer, educator, curator of storytelling experiences. Having previously worked with Jaipur Rugs, Godrej Properties, El Decor, Exchange for Media, she's got a whole world of experience under her wings, and her focus currently lies in brand and marketing communication. She also enjoys working with design, luxury, retail, real estate, fintech, and social impact brands. Sneha is joining us from Bombay today. I am Rinalini. I am from Delhi. I'm a trained architect, but having practiced architecture and lighting design, taught at university, researched historical narratives, and also having been the founding editor of Mondoc India and Stir, my curiosities now lie in questioning normative mechanisms in the creative community, usually through written and curatorial practices such as these. So we both welcome you all to session 3 of VC Live. This definitely it promises to be a very engaging and very insightful session. We are today talking about office design, a changing perspective, and it is going to be a masterclass. The reason that we've picked office design today is because it is an ever-evolving idea or a concept. It has been evolving due to factors of form as well as function, whether it's industrialization, technology, the need for innovation, collaboration, or individualization as well. So large open plan layouts pinned by cabins have given way to hybrid work arrangements, remote working systems, and invisible networks. So in this session, we hope to discuss the changing trends of workspace design, tips and tricks of the trade, and whether there really is a winning formula, whether it be in person, hybrid, remote, or something which is entirely different. So to begin this session, I would like to extend a very, very warm welcome to Yatin Patel, Yatin, if we could have you on your camera on, please. Hello.
Hi, Mrinalini.
So good
Hi,
to have you here, Yatin.
I'm glad to be here, and thanks for giving me this opportunity.
Great. We're very excited. And, if everybody knows, Yatin is somebody to look out for and someone to look at, especially where office design is concerned. And we're really hoping that we get a lot of very insightful tips from you today. But actually, before we begin and before Yatin, I introduce you formally, I'm going to do a really quick audience poll just to kind of get a little peek into what our audience, where they lie and how they are functioning today. So, Rudra, if we can have our first audience poll, what we are asking the audience today is that what is your preferred mode of working today? Is it from the office? Is it from home? Is it a hybrid between office and home? Is it co-working spaces, or it could be something else as well? So if we could have the audience just respond to us, because it'll be interesting to see that we've got over 150 people on Zoom right now, and we've got lots of other people on Facebook. It'll be interesting to see where the poll lies and what the trend is today before we start our chat. So while people respond, let me also quickly introduce Yatin. Yatin, of course, chairs DSP Design Associates as the founder and principal, having established the practice. Oh, sorry, we've got our, yeah. Having established the practice 3 decades ago as a first-generation architect, leading the organization to its long-standing global conceit. He has spearheaded DSP to achieve multi-geography service capabilities across an array of verticals within architecture and interior design, across domains such as master planning, mixed-use developments, high-density residential, corporate, and commercial spaces, hospitality, industrial retail, as well as education. Under his able leadership, DSP Design has been inducted as an exclusive Indian architecture and design practice to One Global Design. This association has increased the firm's presence across the United States, Canada, Mexico, as well as Europe, in addition to its existing foothold in India, Singapore, Indonesia, and Australia. Yatin's architectural directorship also includes his contribution to the board of DSP IB, which is a collaborative smart buildings advisory venture between DSP Design and Intelligent Buildings in the US. So, Yatin, again, a very, very warm welcome. And I think we should be able to kickstart our conversation today. Rudra, can we get the results for the poll so that we know where we are? It's interesting. We've got about 28% of people who want to work from office, 14% who want to work from home, 47% who would prefer a hybrid between office and home, 6% who want to work in co-working spaces, and 4% who chose the option other. So that's undefined. So Yatin, it's interesting to see that we've got a majority, almost 50% of our audience today, who would prefer to work in the hybrid situation. So
Not surprised.
Not surprised, huh? Given the way things are going.
Yeah.
So let's park this statistic aside for a minute, and I would like to welcome you to start your presentation.
And thanks again, and good evening, everyone. Okay, I'm going to start sharing the screen.
Yeah.
Can you see my screen?
Not yet.
Okay. Just give me a minute.
No worries, no worries. I think one of the things that happens with this hybrid such a situation is technical issues. And we're all used to that by now, so it's all good. Yeah?
Here we go.
Your screen is visible, yes. Once again, we welcome questions from our audience, even during the presentation. Just feel free to put it in the chat box below, and we'll try to pick it up after. Yatin, the floor is all yours.
All right. Okay, great. Thanks. So what I'm going to discuss this evening is how the offices have changed, or what has the office evolved into, and where we're headed at, what we as a practice are doing, and I'll give you an insight on what we're doing, and then we can take it on from there. So it is rather changing and evolving now, because we've all been through the pandemic. We hope we've seen the end of it, but and as the poll showed, 47% of the audience still chose to work in a hybrid mode. And like I said, I'm not surprised with that. Uh, People and companies today are actually struggling to get employees back to the office. So how does one deal with all of that? So here are some often ignored influencers in commercial design, and I'll discuss and touch upon few of these aspects in today's discussion. Psychology is much neglected. People really don't take that into consideration when you do design. A new concept which is evolved post the pandemic called neurodiversity is something that we've been adopting and trying to adopt that into the office design now for all the newer projects that we're doing, which really touches upon the diversity of people. Also, behavioral sciences and diversity and inclusivity is much spoken about, but not many people are following it. But that is what we are doing at the firm now. So I'll take you through a few projects and tell you how we've gone about adopting some of these aspects in terms of, this one is for a company called Luby Pumps, which is in Ahmedabad. This is a corporate office which they commissioned us for. And this is about 150,000 square feet where we're doing the architecture and the interiors. We were commissioned for both as a comprehensive solution. So typically the organization was more for manufacturing setup, and the kind of employees that were there came typically from the mid segment of Ahmedabad. And Ahmedabad is made up of what is called as poles. These are small neighborhoods within the city, which are very unique to Ahmedabad. And we said, how are we going to adopt or make use of the poles, or use the psychology of the people and make them come into a comfortable space. So all the employees of the 5-decade-old company and came out from Ahmedabad's poles, right? So when they commissioned us, we said, how about if we're going to build a corporate office, would it look like a high-rise corporate building? How would people react and respond to that? Would they be overwhelmed? So would we have enough productivity? Would they feel uncomfortable or confused? So we said, we won't go that route in creating a tall, high-rise corporate building. But the messaging that we wanted to also create is, first of all, make the employees comfortable, not overwhelm them, but also give them a sense of a futuristic and modern environment. So we analyzed what the pole is, trying to understand the psyche of people and where they came from. So this is a typical pole. It's like I said, it's a neighborhood created with different courtyards, meandering streets, narrow alleys, and lanes. Again, typically, what we see in Ahmedabad is the kite flying season is very, very pronounced and very known for. So here are some traditional multi-use urban centers. You see the streets, the narrow volumes that get created, and then suddenly opening up into a larger courtyard, which became this urban centers. And a lot of activities, multi-use activities. So you see children playing, or during festivities, they had larger gatherings in those areas. So we said, how do we kind of mask this out? So we said, let's start creating courtyards and not go with either just a stub building or a tall vertical building. We said, let's create an internal courtyard. So we started off with this C-shaped building, creating the sense of enclosure within the plot itself. And then we took from going by what we saw in Ahmedabad and studying the culture of Ahmedabad, this became an inward-looking courtyard, which we then started to break it down further into much smaller courtyards. So the larger courtyard was divided into two by adding on a central block as well. And then we raised that, we elevated that to create recreational spaces. And in doing that, what we got finally is a number of terraces at different levels, which is typical of Ahmedabad. The image that you see on the bottom left-hand side is a typical pole during the kite flying season. So what we did is created this environment which people would have been used to. So the masting of the building is what people that came out from the pole would really be comfortable with. And these are images of how we masked out the entire building there to break the entire volume. Also, then we got into the study of climate and the heat gain and how to reduce the heat gain onto those. So these are images of what we created as the courtyards. So this is one courtyard leading on to the next area there. So interesting volumes got created. So there were double height spaces, triple height spaces, terraces that were visible from every corner of the building. These are images of what you see as a terrace just above the reception area, looking down into the courtyard. And an image from the top where you see multiple levels of terraces that got created, which were used as recreation spaces, spill out spaces from the office floors itself. Here you see them at various levels. So we had, I think, about 7 or 8 different terrace levels that were created on that. So that's what it is going to look like now. This is under construction. We're nearing completion in a couple of months now. So this really then gives you a final product, which is a very modern looking structure, but still keeping in mind the psychological needs of the employees of the organization. How do you want to play this, Mrinali? Do you want to take questions now or just keep it for later if there are any questions that people may have?
I think what we can go through the presentation now, and then we'll have a discussion post. So we can weave in the questions then itself.
Okay, all right. So again, then talking about influencers of emerging trends in workspaces. So in today's age, and this is the post the pandemic, people are, like most of you, may be working from home. What is it that would pull people back to come into the office? That's the big problem that large organizations are having to actually get their employees back into the office space. So, you know, I was talking to a few of my clients who we're doing a couple of projects for, and they were actually struggling. They had their phase 1 and phase 2 of their come back to work, and they said 50% should come back, but they had only close to about 10% that actually came back to work. People have gone to their hometowns, are working out from there, and really don't want to come back. So it's become really difficult for some of these organizations to get their workforce back to the office. So how does one deal with that? We said we'll have to have the need for well-being and, you know, provide environments that nurture well-being. And we look for people first and, you know, get inclusivity and diversity at the workplace. You know, and these are main drivers and influencers of the emerging trends. Like I said, psychological aspects need to be looked at, and sensitivities. These are really key words that one has to look for when you're designing larger footprints, primarily for either the tech companies or the fintech companies where the workforces are in a few thousands. So, so we have a few concepts which we say you enhance agility. So there are options of choice seating that are provided. So it's no longer going to be just individual work desks. That phenomenon is changing very extremely rapidly. So you don't have, we have what we call as a free address where nobody has their own desk. So you have the flexibility of sitting or choosing where you would want to sit on a particular day. You could also have spaces that are created for choice seating. This is all stemming out of the hybrid culture that is evolving. Because if I would say that, and there are different versions of hybrid. So hybrid for some organizations could mean that an employee comes in for 3 days and doesn't come in for 2 days. Hybrid could also mean that I could come in only for a couple of hours, choose to come in at any given point of time with no fixed dates in mind. So keeping all those aspects in mind, what policies that organizations are adopting, one really has to create of the spaces and environment that are conducive to all of these concepts, which is why we say we have a very agile kind of an office, adaptive office, which can change and adapt to any particular settings, right? The other point I'd like to touch on is neurodiversity. And this is something that we are propagating uh, along with our partners overseas as a big driver. We've realized that every individual has different levels of diversity, neurodiversity. So some people may like to work in an environment, if I had to do concentrated or focused work, in an enclosed space. Whereas a hyposensitive person would like to be in the open, like an open office plan, but have people around them and still be more productive. So productivity levels could vary from these different types of people. So there are what we call as hypersensitive and hyposensitive people. So all of us have different degrees uh, of sensitivity. So one really has to identify, which is a task on its own, to see what the workforce is like, whether there are a majority of hypersensitive people or hyposensitive people. This is tough, like I said, to identify and for people to come forth and say, I am such a kind of I have this sensitivity. So what do organizations do to cater to these needs? So one has to create all these different settings within the office environment, because now we've got rid of fixed desks, that we have more space, we've got additional real estate available. So we create these choice seatings, create spaces which are meant for co-creation, creation, ideation, and individual work with different kind of settings that take care of hypersensitive or hyposensitive needs. So one such example that we are doing for an organization called ZS in Pune, it's an entire building spread across 10 floors. This is just one typical layout of one of the floors where we have a completely open office plan where we've got the neighborhoods that are created. So there are 4 different neighborhoods in the building on the floor plate. That's I don't know if you can see my cursor, but I'm trying to annotate those. But yeah, there are 4 different neighborhoods which we created. These neighborhoods consist of close to about 50 or 60 employees within that particular neighborhood. which are self-contained, which have different settings of collaborative spaces, meeting spaces. Again, different settings in each neighborhood had different settings. So that's what we were doing pre-pandemic as well. But now, when we talk about neurodiversity, we started to adopt and create much different settings. So, on the top left-hand side, you see those three little chairs. Those are individual and focused chairs. So one can really sit there and work through the day. The two highlighted boxes on the top right and top uh, on the right hand bottom and right hand top are what we call is high focus areas or neuro zones. Now these neuro zones are, we've created two different settings here. So one we say is a quiet car. So for somebody who would like to do individualistic work and be extremely focused, we've created what we call as a quiet car. That entire area again has a few different settings. So what you see on the layout is you'll see the typical four workstations together. You see the individual workstations as well, and different typologies of work desks thereof. The other one is the sensory workspace that has, there could be even music playing in that setup. You could have aromas of different aromas that are spread in that area. So here's what the quiet zone looks like, the quiet car. So you see these individual work pods on the right hand side, and then you've got the individual workspaces. Again, high level of acoustics, both from the carpet to the workstations, which are highly acoustical, to acoustical ceilings. So this in fact becomes an extremely focused area for people to do heads down work. Again, all of these spaces would have biophilia incorporated within that. Here's what we say: high focus, a sensory space where you could have music playing in the background, but still allowing for focused heads down work. Another example of how, and this is a very good example which I like sharing very often with people, is an office that completed for an organization called TomTom in Pune. Again, on the left, what you see is the layout that we did pre-pandemic, and this entire project we completed within the pandemic, and went through the whole process of change and the needs of the organization. So the organization needed about 1,000 seats on this floor plate. There's about 100,000 square feet of a single large floor plate. We actually studied and mapped their usage patterns, their behavioral patterns. We used technology to map their space utilization, not just the workstations, but also meeting rooms. We came up with a plan that said 4,000 employees you could do with only 700 workstations, because when we carried out those studies, we realized that there was no more than 70% of the employees in the office at the peak load. So we said, we'll give you 700 workstations, but we'll give you choice seating. But that was pre-pandemic. And then post-pandemic, what we realized is that the organization changed policies. They adopted work from home methods. They said hybrid working would be allowed as a policy. So you see the whole layout changed completely. There were much fewer workstations. There were close to only about 400 workstations, but this could accommodate at least 700 to 800 people at any given point of time, which is where we had primary work points and we had secondary work points, which became choice seating. And all the spaces were can be used in different formats. So let's say, for example, even the cafeteria. The cafeteria also doubles up as meeting spaces. There are cubicles which are created within the cafe, which could be used for dining or for even focused work or for meetings. So all the spaces became multi-use areas. So here you see an isometric view of that entire layout, and you'll see different settings within each of these neighborhoods. So we have a regular bench kind of desking. We've got the circular desk, which allows for more collaboration, so eye contact, face-to-face kind of work environments. There are raised tables for more like a community kind of tables. So various kinds of settings, various scrum areas which were created within the space. The With the pandemic, we realized that whilst we're going to do all of these, make these smaller, the number of workstations became lesser. And for a situation where we have hybrid working, and for people who may want to come in only for a couple of hours of the day and not really want to book an entire workstation for the day, we created what we call as the business hub as well. So this is like a typical business class lounge in an airport where people could come in and work and log in there and work out of there for a few hours and go back. Here are images of what we just completed for TomTom. Again, a lot of biophilia that we use, again from a wellness perspective. Art, promoting local art, and that's the typical open office area where you see a desk which is just a tabletop, and people can just come in, plug and play out of there. Different types of collaborative environments that were created, screens that separate various areas. Again, all acoustic. Even the light fitting you see, that's also wrapped with the acoustic material around it. Taking on to another project that we're doing. This is for KPMG in Mumbai that we just finished. Again, you see all the spaces, even this is actually part of the reception, a lobby space where we had this sculpture commission. Again, these areas that you see around it became spaces where one could really work. So even organizations like a consulting firm like KPMG, they've adopted this kind of work culture. KPMG has been our customer for several years, and we've handheld them through their process of workspace design. So we've gotten them out of the typical cubicle culture into a much more open environment. So here's what you see, how they function now, or how they have adopted to the newer ways of working. Again, some more images where these become meeting pods. And like I said, in the cafeteria environment also promotes meeting spaces. So at the far end, you see a lot of meeting areas which double up as dining spaces as well. When we come to architecture, again, for commercial buildings, this is a project that we're doing for Google. This is in Bangalore. The project is called Rio. The building is called Rio. This is the single largest project which has a dynamic glass. It's about 200,000 square feet of dynamic glass that we've used on this project to wrap the building. This dynamic glass is basically glass that would change the tint based on the sun's path and the sun's rays and the heat that gets generated out of it. So you have a uniform environment within the space. It cuts down on the heat load, so it's extremely sustainable. So those are images of that building. What we also created were pockets within the facade that allowed for vertical greens to get created within the facade itself. So we had a lot of biophilia that got incorporated within the facade itself. Those are some images of that. This is another project that we did. We've completed now, again, where we use a lot of sustainability, a lot of smart building technologies that were used within this. Here, interestingly, as part of the facade, we utilize sun shading devices, which really look like that. Very thin, sleek sun shading devices that were used there. Well, that's how we mapped the heat gain and then came up with this design and the pattern that really, shaded the entire facade. Yeah, so the bottom line is what we work towards when we do commercial design. As an architect, we try to tell our customers that we are actually not a service provider, but we are your partners. And in doing what we do, in making employees more productive, making environments which are more sustainable, reducing heat loads, all of that by use of technology, design, we say that we will add to your bottom line. We make your employees more productive, and therefore we call ourselves as partners and not service providers. Yeah, that's it that I have today, Mrinalini.
Great. Thanks, Yatin. That was very fascinating, very insightful. And I know we are already getting a lot of questions from our audience across platforms. It's interesting to talk about offices in a very different light today, right? And I think what was most fascinating for me was this comparison between the pre and post pandemic, which I would definitely like to get into. But we also had an interesting audience poll. And this is something that a lot of people showed interest in. And I thought that it might be interesting to bring this up at this point. So Rudra, can we get the second audience poll, please? So a lot of our audience is actually from the design community, right? A lot of them are designing offices and are architects and practitioners. And we also want to understand from them what are their biggest challenges that they face while designing office spaces. Is it unclear design briefs? Is it space constraints? Is it budget constraints? Is it need for spatial adaptability or flexibility, something that Yatin, you've spoken about, or anything else? So it'll be interesting to see what they have to say. And while we kind of collect this data, Yatin, of course, the idea of having this masterclass today was also to highlight a little bit about the changes that have come about in the last few years in the designing of office spaces and commercial spaces as well, and what the evolution has been. So before getting into the idea of the whole pre and post pandemic, if we can take a step back a little bit, because office spaces have been evolving over centuries, right? We've gone from open plan communal spaces to more assembly lines to enclosed and then back to open plan, whether it was the industrialization period or whether it was something that where people wanted to do collaborative work. But what, according to you, like what have been some of the most challenging phases for you in the last 3 decades of your practice with respect to how the way that we perceive office design has changed over these last few years? Well, 30 years.
Yeah, 30 years, it's been a complete change.
I can imagine, yeah.
If I recollect the first office that we probably designed, most of it were enclosed spaces, with a heavy concentration of an enclosed office, right? Everyone had that hierarchical kind of a mindset that if I have an office, I am someone. If I have a bigger office, I've arrived.
Right.
So from that, we went to the open office culture, the open office environment that got created. We then started talking about what we now call neighborhoods. The plans became much more open. And then they started coming back into forming smaller groups of people working together. And now what we're seeing is complete free address. So like I mentioned, and I showed on some of the projects, that nobody owns a desk. It doesn't belong to anybody.
Right.
So, and in that, technology is playing a huge part in the office setup. So, yeah, that's the biggest change, and I think the biggest driver, even going forward. Technology will play an important role in whatever that we do and however we use our office spaces.
Mm. It's interesting that you brought technology into the conversation now, because like you said, it's been one of the greatest driving forces for these changes. In fact, today, a lot of corporate and a lot of like these high tech employment areas, you're connected from the time that you wake up, you're at work, right? From the time that you pick up your phone, you've already logged in, you're looking at your email, whether you're at whether you're still in bed or you're eating breakfast, you're driving to work, or no matter what, connected to work constantly. And what's also interesting about that is that there's this very sort of overwhelming sense of me time, of kind of disconnecting from work on the other hand, right? And there are these two sort of concepts that are running very strongly and parallel to each other. So how do you address that within an office environment, within an office building? There are a lot of breakout spaces that have become a norm. There are a lot of these, I like the word that you use, neighborhoods that you're designing for within office spaces. But how do you cater to the non-working component of people being in office all the time or being connected to work all the time?
So larger organizations where there is a flexibility and luxury of space, I wouldn't say luxury of space, it is becoming a norm, is to provide more and more amenities where we have few recreational spaces, cafes. Again, cafes is an interesting thing. So, larger organization where you have a workforce of say 1,000 or 2,000 employees, and they provide a cafe space, which normally we say 1 in 4 or 1 in 5. So for every 5 employees, we have a seat. So if say you had 1,000 employees, you'll provide a cafeteria, which would occupy 200 people at a go. Now that's huge amount of real estate, right? So what we started also doing is creating smaller pockets of cafes, which we started calling work cafes.
Okay.
So it gave you a choice of going to, probably if it is a multi-level building, or I can go to one work cafe on the 4th floor or choose to go to the larger cafe. Now, these work cafes were smaller pockets, which are multi-use spaces where you could have a meeting, you could have a training session. People, who carry their food can just go there, eat their food, and just eat out of that. So this reduced the load on the real estate to provide a large, singular cafe space. And we created these smaller, multi-utility kind of spaces, which became more collaborative and more engaging spaces within the office.
It's interesting because like you said, it's a lot of real estate that goes into these things, right? I know that there've been a lot of these companies that have started to provide like nap areas or sleeping pods and things like that. And I guess now there is this constant struggle between, should you even have an office or not? I mean, that's a separate question. But are people and are companies actually open to and willing to provide such amenities? Or is it an increasing trend?
I'd say it's becoming a need. And like I mentioned earlier, that organizations are struggling to get their employees back to work.
Right.
So and attrition rates have gone crazy. So all these companies now are providing all of these facilities and amenities within their work areas. So that there's a good balance of work. There's good work-life balance for the employee within the office premises itself.
So in fact, a lot of them, I mean, besides, just for the employees themselves, but a lot of them have started to provide things like creches and medical facilities and healthcare and gyms. And, I was at the Cisco campus a couple of years ago, and it's the second largest campus after the one in California.
Yeah.
And I mean, besides all these, they also have laundry services. They've got everything, right? It's like a little mini village that you're designing for. So as an architect that is actually designing office spaces and commercial spaces, has your sort of perspective on this and your approach to design, have you had to change that completely? It's almost, in one sense, like one project is asking you or demanding an entire, like from master plan down to furniture layouts from a particular, like that process it involves everything from there to there. So has that been a challenge, or has that been?
No, I think it's been an evolution through time, and I don't think it's been a challenge. But every time we do another project, we're looking up and trying to better the previous ones, right? So we work very closely with our customers to what we call co-create a brief, and not just go by numbers that the client would give us and say, okay, I've got 1,000 employees, let's design an office for 1,000 people. So
right.
we co-create the brief, and then provide. We talk them through what we should provide in terms of amenities or what are must-haves, good to haves. So yeah, it's not been a challenge. In fact, we're educating some of our customers most of the time.
In fact, I've noticed you've said this on a number of occasions before, that one of your main sort of step ones of the process for you has been changing the brief from the client. So if the client has given you a brief, what is the first thing that DSP does? We change the brief. Would you like to add to that?
Yeah, so we'd like to challenge what our customers give us as a brief, because they're used to a particular way of working, right? And is that the best way? Is that the most productive way? If we as architects can show them a different perspective of how they should conduct their work, and in doing so, if we can ensure that the productivity levels increase, I think most organizations would adopt that, right? So we actually challenge the brief, and the TomTom project that we did is a good example of that. So we deployed technology to really map how the spaces were being utilized, how many workstations were being utilized, how many meeting rooms were being utilized, and by who and when,
right.
and how often, right? So I recollect the brief that said we need 36 meeting rooms of various sizes. We ultimately provided only 10, but we provided different spaces that allowed for many more meeting areas. They realized that not all the meetings require to be enclosed.
Right.
They realized that the utilization of all of those 36 rooms that they had was under 50%. Or they were not utilized to the fullest capacity. Let's say there's a 10-seater meeting room. It would be booked for only 2 people using the room.
Yeah.
So organizations think that, today I have this, they're always booked. So many meeting rooms are booked. Therefore, I need at least that many or more. But when you do the deep dive and study how the spaces are being utilized, you have evidence and proof of how you can change that or better that. Again, number of work desks. From 1,000 employees, there are 1,000 desks, but only 70% are there at any given point of time. Why should one provide for 1,000 desks?
Most definitely. I think that's a very poignant point that you put across. And it might be interesting to get some of our poll results here to see what the audience is facing as challenges when they're designing office spaces as well, right? Interestingly, 50% of the audience says that their biggest challenge is budget constraints. 38% say that there is a need for spatial adaptability or flexibility. 34% say that their brief is unclear. 30% says that the space, they have space constraints. So it's interesting. I mean, I think that's one thing that's been a constant complaint for all designers and architects, is that clients don't have enough of a budget. But putting that aside, I think this idea of unclear design briefs is very interesting, because it is the responsibility of the designer to interpret what the client's need is, but also provide for them more than what the client thinks he or she needs, right?
Yeah, absolutely. Like I said, one should co-create the brief along with the client and show them what they haven't seen before.
But considering that we're all struggling with budget constraints and we're all struggling with tight monies, and given the way things are now, right, in terms of the number of people who are actually coming into office, the kind of facilities and infrastructure that you need to provide for people in a workspace, hasn't that kind of skyrocketed budgets and reduced the so-called understanding of the space versus employee ratio within the office? How do you tackle something like that?
So when we talk about budgets, I like to categorize them differently, where we say there are all organizations have when we talk of multinational organizations or larger organizations, they come with some standards, right? Sure. They have to bring out their brand, and they have particular standards overseas or here. So there are some things which are a given, where some people come with stipulated budgets. Of course, all projects are driven by costs as well. There are costs, I won't say constraints, there's a budget that's created, right? But how do you define whether it's a high budget or low budget or insufficient budget? There are the must-haves, there are good to haves, or there are very nice things to have. So it really depends on what you are going to focus on. And the focus primarily when you're designing an office or a commercial space is, how do you get the employees to become more productive, to give them a sense of well-being, to give them a sense of a much nicer environment to be in, and reduce attrition for the company. So the sense of belonging, and that's what we can do as architects, right? So create an environment that is more conducive to productivity. So in doing that, you have to have the right workstations, you have to have the right ergonomical chairs, you deal with biophilia, you get the sense of well-being within the area, you nurture natural light, you have human-centric lighting, and so there's so many things that one can do, but it really would depend on what you want to concentrate on.
Right. No, a fair point. And I think different people will have different needs, right? I mean, we've got lots of large organizations who literally shut down their offices during the pandemic. If I'm not mistaken, Twitter said that, okay, we're not even going to have workspaces anymore. They've given up their very massively rented spaces in Hudson Yards in Manhattan and said that, okay, from now you work from home. So different people have different needs and different requirements. And I've been talking to a lot of architects, especially over the last couple of years. And it's interesting to note how some people have said that, given that we were forced into a work from home situation, they might have struggled in the beginning, but they've now reached like very high levels of efficiency of working from home, while others are still struggling and are still trying to find their way around this whole hybrid situation or trying to come back to work and things like that. A lot of people, there've been a lot of articles, of course, around this topic. And Forbes magazine recently issued an article titled, "It's Time for the Workplace to Change Again." Right. And so they say, and I'm going to quote because I thought this was quite appropriate. So they say that already the workspace was becoming smarter with new hybrid work arrangements enabled by mobile technology and challenging decades of cube farms and cabled employees. But the pandemic has disrupted work and forced the need to rethink how the office looks when work comes back. A focus still including productivity and collaboration, but now also cleanliness and safety, heightened engagement and adaptability. the pandemic has created a situation where it became physically unsafe to work around each other. And overnight, one office became multiple distributed offices in people's homes, right? So a quick question, but do you think that this is the death of the office, or are we still going to struggle to bring people back? Or people are just waiting to get back, perhaps?
So it's not the end of the office, for sure. We are all social butterflies, right? We have to socialize. Whilst efficiency levels had increased during the lockdown and work from home situation, but there was also a lot of fatigue which crept in, and people wanted to come back to work. People want to come back to work. So
Yes.
we need to have environments that will allow people to work from the office. And again, different companies will adopt different policies. So like I said earlier, hybrid, when we say hybrid work culture, it could be different forms of hybrid, right? So some people could be allowed to come in for a few days or for a few hours. And we really need to create environments that, can support those policies.
Right. Great. I think we are running a little short of time, so I'm going to start picking up some questions that we've got from our audience. Interestingly, a lot of them are actually projected towards the work that you've shown. But let's pick one from Rahul Bavadia. He's saying that they install indoor plants in offices and okay, no. There are somebody was asking if there are no designated spaces in offices for the employees, how do you manage storage issues and personalization?
So there are what we provide for is lockers. So there are lockers that are provided at key areas, at entrance areas, or let's say in a neighborhood, if the one neighborhood is free address, just outside that neighborhood, you would have lockers that would get created, which could take personal items.
Okay.
Because the desks would be completely clean, no storage units, none of that for personal items.
I think it's also a lot of people now, they're just kind of like decluttering their, their personal spaces anyway. The lesser you carry with you, the lesser you have to sanitize and you have to clean and maintain and all of that. So I know for a fact that women who used to carry large handbags have now gone into little satchels, right? Me included. So I think this is also a lot of these are repercussions from the pandemic and just how our lifestyles are changing, not just our workspaces. We've got some questions regarding your projects. So your Ahmedabad project, which is the Luby, I think. So Krishna Verma is asking, how do you tackle heat control in the Ahmedabad project?
So again, heat, I mean, we obviously analyze the heat, the sun path, the sun direction. So most of the building was self-shading, right? So during different times of the day, you had different shadows that the building itself would kind of create. The other surfaces, we had these vertical louvers, if you recollect. And those were sun shading devices. The glazing also that was used was a low E glass. So that really reduced the heat gain. And yes, Ahmedabad has extreme climatic conditions. So yeah.
Right. Yeah. So in fact, talking about that, also there are a few questions about the HVAC systems, right? One is, of course, your cooling mechanisms, but also how do you aim to minimize the possibility of COVID transmission and spreading? So are there any sort of specialized systems or provisions in place for your HVAC systems?
So there are lots of layers of filters that are created within the air conditioning system, right from the air handling units to right down to the last leg of diffusers as well. So there's lots of filters that are created.
Okay, and one, of course, there's a common question that a lot of people are asking is just this. You've been designing offices and not just offices, right? You design all kinds of buildings. But what's really interesting is that you've been doing work which kind of varies in scale from thousands of employees to smaller, intimate spaces. How does your approach to such varied scales change, especially within the office design space? And how do you kind of adapt to those changes?
I don't think there's any adaptation that we really need to make, because even if you have 1,000 employees, right, you're still building up from that small intimate space. You're designing for the people, right? You're designing for the one employee, and you're just expanding on that exponentially. So I don't see the need for adapting really. Yes,
So it's a very
but
natural process for you.
It is extremely natural, but scaling up, scaling down, amenities may change, may reduce, or you strike them off depending on the amount of space or the number of people that one is catering to.
But principally, you're still addressing the same concerns and you're still addressing the same sort of fundamentals, irrespective of how big or small your building might be, or even different typologies of buildings, right? You have your fundamentals in place, and that's what you're working with as parameters. A lot of people are actually very interested in the practice and want to know how you started DSP, how did you establish the practice, and what your advice would be for young practitioners who want to set up their own practices.
It's not easy. It's definitely not easy to start a practice, and more so in today's day and age. It's become extremely competitive. I'm not trying to discourage people, but competition is really cutthroat, and it's not easy. I mean, one may start off with a few projects and think that we're good and we'll manage, but I think to be lean is best. That's the advice I would give. We're close to about 300 employees, and it's challenging. Every month on month is a challenge to keep cash flows going. But yeah, being lean, I think, works well. We started off that way. I started on my own as an individual, and then we got a few more people and a few more, and we're now at 300 odd people. But yeah, it's not easy. It's a lot. It's a lot of hard work. It's continuous hard work. I mean, not to say that any other organization you don't have to work hard, but it's tough.
It's not, but you have to persevere in order to do it. And there are examples like you who are aspirational and inspirational for a lot of people here. So just a couple of last questions that we're going to pick up. Shresh Gupta is asking, how are evidence-based design tools and technology used to take informed design decisions for a better end user experience?
So data-driven design is the best, and that's what we do. So again, I go back to the example of TomTom, right? So we had created the data to show to the client that this is how you're using your space. So it's extremely important to have data that drives the design.
Right. And are there post-occupancy evaluation analysis, is that done to inform future designs? What tools, techniques, and technology are used? And also, is the user experience quantifiable?
So again, the same sensors that one would use to map space utilization is used for post occupancy as well, to really map how the spaces are being utilized, and then does it really need to adapt or change. Businesses may change, their needs may change over time, or a client may get a project and say, I need 100 people more to be accommodated in a particular area, and they need to work together. So I've had a lot of examples of clients telling me that a business unit comes, they say, I have a project, I need 100 people. Okay, let's hire another space. But hey, you have those seats in your office, which are not being utilized. And there's 4 seats there, 10 seats there. And, so the newer ways of working and adopting technology to map how the spaces are being utilized is extremely important, and really is helpful for real estate. because real estate is not cheap, right, anymore, and it's only going
Right.
up.
Yeah.
So going back to us informing our customers that we are your partners and not service providers.
Hmm. Right. And how much of someone's asking, Vandana Jain is asking, how important is the principles of Vastu Shastra? Like, do clients are they still demanding that? And does that really figure into your planning?
Well, not really. Uh, Large organizations, are very democratic, and there's no one
Driven by
faith.
different motives, perhaps.
Yeah, so maybe just the business leader of that organization or that office
Hmm.
may say, it would be nicer if you look into Vastu of my office or where I sit, but that's about it. And
Okay.
no, but yeah, again, Vastu is a science that was created uh, many years back, uh, and we didn't have office buildings or commercial spaces like that. So I don't
Hmm.
think they really apply too well to commercial spaces.
We're getting a lot of questions about how to make office spaces more human-centric, or certain strategic points to in designing offices, and especially by DSP. Those of you who've missed out on the presentation by Yatin, there is a recording that will be available on social media. You can follow the Godrej Locks Facebook page, and this is actually being streamed live on that, so you can see the recording there. You'll get a lot of answers because Yatin's presentation, I have to say, has been one of the clearest and very sort of well-articulated presentations, which made my job a lot more difficult because questions and having a discussion post that has been interesting, but also very poignant. But I would like to, at this point, also pull up in audience feedback form, Rudra, if we can have that. It's always great to hear back from our audience and to hear what they want to talk about next, what they want to discuss, what is important for them. And at the same time, Yatin, I would like to extend a very, very heartfelt thank you to you for taking out your time. I know we had to reschedule this session once before, but I have to say that we've got a great audience. We've had more than 200 people on Zoom and across Facebook, and we're very glad to have had this opportunity to speak with you and have you on board today. Any last words or parting advice for some of our young practitioners here today?
I think focus on productivity. Focus on, if you're talking about commercial design, the biggest focus should be how you get employees to become productive. So you can adopt technology or anything that you need to make spaces more productive.
Yeah, very well said, Yatin. And I think what's also key over here is that productivity can be interpreted in multiple ways, right? Now, whether you need to address well-being in order for someone to be productive, you need to address an environment, like you suggested, a comfort level, familiarity. That was an interesting point that you brought about, especially in the Luby project, is that it's not only about providing somebody a comfortable immediate environment, but your larger context and familiarity makes them feel more ease in their working spaces. So thank you so much for being here with us today. Thank you, Yatin, for taking out the time. Thank you to the entire audience for being here. Thank you, of course, to our backend team at Godrej and Foyd. We will be having another session soon, so please keep in tune with what's going on. Also, just to announce that Godrej Locks recently concluded the GVs Award for this year. The first edition received a great response with over 300 entries across 10 categories. Yatin, in fact, was part of the jury panel for that as well. You can see the winning projects and their details on the Godrej Locks social media pages and also on the link given in the chat box. So we'll be sharing a link with you. This was curated by Foyd, which is the Festival of Architecture and Interior Design. GVs is dedicated to celebrating both innovative and conscious ideas in architecture and design. And that is exactly what we have witnessed through these projects that we got as submissions. The awards is an extension to the Godrej Value Co-Creators Club, which already has a membership of over 700 practitioners and hopes to grow larger and wider with more community-led initiatives such as this. So if you are interested, please go on, sign in, become a member of GVCC. There are a lot of things that are happening. There are a lot of education initiatives such as this, but there will be a lot more that's going to be coming up. So take a moment, see the details and register, and keep in touch with us, because there's a lot more that's happening on social media and through VC Live. We will be having another session in a couple of weeks, and we'll probably be addressing hospitality design over there. So keep in tune with us. And Yatin, thank you all so much for being here tonight.
Great. Thanks so much, Ravi.
Thank you. Have a great week ahead.
You too. Bye.
Bye-bye.